Our top story, a new double mutant variant of coronavirus has been detected in 18 states in the country, in addition to many other strains or variants of concern which have also been found here. That's what the Health Ministry announced yesterday. This amid fears of a second wave of the crisis in the country. Here's a report.
After weeks of speculation, the government has today confirmed an Indian strain of the coronavirus identified with as a double mutant. Maharashtra has the highest, over 200 cases, 9 in Delhi, 3 in Punjab and 1 each in Jammu, Ladakh and Odisha.
कोई भी लिंकेज ऐसा एस्टैब्लिश नहीं कर पाए हम जिसमें कि हम ये कहें कि ये सर्ज जो हमें विभिन्न शहरों में देखने को मिल रही है इसका कारण डायरेक्टली सिर्फ म्यूटेशन है.
Health officials say these two mutations in the strain identified in India confer immune escape and increased infectivity. There is a possibility of reinfections.
According to the Health Ministry, such mutations confer increased infectivity and immune escape, which means that the new strain of virus can be more infectious. However, the government also maintains that the strategy to fight COVID and the vaccinations that are available in India are adequate, not just to fight the older variant, but the mutated one as well.
So when we talk of the double mutant, for example, that you mentioned, that is E484Q and L452R, there are two mutations where two residues have changed. In the genetic sequence, two residues have been mutated into another type of a residue.
Apart from this strain, the government also released a breakup of the 771 cases of the UK, South Africa and Brazil strain. These have been found in as many as 18 states and union territories, the most being the UK strain, of which 336 are in Punjab alone. The sole case of the Brazil strain has been found in Maharashtra.
टेस्ट करिए, जहां टेस्ट कम हो रहे हैं, टेस्ट पॉजिटिविटी बढ़ रही है, उसको हमें ठीक करना है मिलकर, और हमारे पास टेस्ट बनाने की कोई कमी नहीं है.
The experts believe that mutation in viruses is a natural phenomenon, and when viruses replicate, they do mutate. The only way to stop mutation is to stop the virus, and that can only happen by maintaining COVID-appropriate behavior, by wearing masks and by getting vaccination when our turn comes. With camera person Mohammad Mursaleen, I'm Akshay Dongre for NDTV.
But speaking to NDTV, Dr. V.K. Paul said that the government doesn't believe this latest surge in cases is being caused by the new variants.
How much should India be worried with this new mutation?
Well, India has set up a very robust mechanism to sequence the viruses for possible mutations of interest, mutations of concern, and mutations that may require investigation through our national laboratories, 10 of them in various regions. So we have first and foremost, a very, very systematic and a robust mechanism. Since the advent of the UK variant, so to say, in December, we have subjected as many as 11,000 virus strains to sequencing to detect mutations that are likely to be there, with particular interest on the mutations that are UK variant mutation, which is B117, the South African variant, as well as the Brazilian variant. These are the three which are quite important in terms of the international impact. Overall, all the mutants put together, the three major ones and the others that we are referring to, we don't believe any of them are pushing the surge as such based on the data. When you connect the data from the lab to epidemiology, UK variant is relatively well understood globally, so it has some tendency outside, but transmissibility, we will watch it. The other mutants that we are talking about, the double mutation and so on, we will watch them. Mutations occur all the time, and every mutation is not necessarily of any significance to human health beyond the general pandemic status. I also want to state here, before I lose the thread, is please remember that mutations occur when virus is replicated. There is a messenger on RNA strand. Once the replication of this is going on, the nature makes mistakes. The virus makes mistakes. Therefore, the ultimate prevention for mutation is to curb the spread of the virus, transmission of the virus, throw it out, suppress it so much that it does not replicate, and then there will be no chance of mutations coming up.
Now, Maharashtra on Wednesday evening reported the highest number of daily COVID cases in any state since the beginning of the pandemic, recording close to 32,000 cases. Maharashtra reported 31,855 new COVID cases and 95 deaths, while 15,098 patients were also discharged following recovery. There was also a huge spike in COVID cases in Mumbai as the city reported a record 5,185 positive cases and 6 deaths. Dharavi, which is one of the largest slums in Asia, reported 62 COVID positive cases. That's the highest since May last year. And in the national capital as well.
9 of India's top 10 districts with most active COVID cases are in Maharashtra, and the state's health infrastructure is once again struggling to cope. Relatives of COVID patients outside this government hospital in Maharashtra's Nashik, a district that has seen a massive rise in COVID cases in the last 2 weeks, say it has been a struggle to get beds at COVID wards.
नासिक शहर में किधर ही बेड नहीं मिल रहा है। नासिक शहर के जिला रुग्णालय में यहाँ पे अतिशय भयानक परिस्थिति है। यहाँ का एक पण बेड रिकामा नहीं है। आज हमने हमारे रिलेटिव को यहाँ लेके आए थे। यहाँ बेड की उपलब्धता नहीं है और जल्दी से जल्दी शासन ने इस पे ध्यान देना चाहिए और बेड उपलब्ध करना चाहिए।
A rerun too of viral videos like these shot recently inside COVID wards at hospitals in Nashik and Aurangabad.
मला खूप शुगर आहे, माझ्या छातीत खूप दुखतंय, मला ॲडमिट करून घ्या. तर ते लोक मला म्हणे एकही बेड खाली नाहीये, तुम्ही होम क्वारंटाईन व्हा आणि घरातच हे करा. तर मी म्हटलं माझं घर खूप छोटं आहे, माझे लहान लहान लेकरं आहे, मी घरात कशी क्वारंटाईन होऊ, मला तुम्ही इथे ॲडमिट करून घ्या. तर ते मला म्हटले एकही बेड खाली नाहीये. तर मी त्यांना इतके हातपाय जोडले, इतकं म्हणजे खूप रिक्वेस्ट केली, विनंती केली की मला ॲडमिट करून घ्या. तुम्हीच बघा, तुमच्या स्वतःच्या डोळ्यांनी बघा हे कसं खाली आहे, सगळे कॉट खाली आहे. हे भ्रष्ट डॉक्टर आणि भ्रष्ट सरकार.
Maharashtra reported 132 deaths in a 24-hour period between Monday and Tuesday, the highest number of daily deaths since the 20th of November last year. More than 3,000 new cases have been reported daily in Mumbai for 3 consecutive days, although deaths have remained 10 or less.
शहरामध्ये वाढत्या रुग्णसंख्येला वैद्यकीय सुविधा मिळण्यासाठी आपण तयारी सुरू केलेली आहे. त्यामध्ये मेरीचं CCC सेंटर सुरू करायचं, ठक्करडोबचं सुरू करायचं.
The latest lockdown in Maharashtra is in the district of Beed that will be totally shut between the 26th of March and the 4th of April. The state's battle with COVID is far from any resolution. With Pooja Bharadwaj in Mumbai, Anusaya Mathur for NDTV.
In fact, the national capital, there's also a COVID worry there as cases are surging. 1,254 cases were reported on Wednesday, the highest in 3 months. 6 deaths as 769 recoveries have also been reported in the 24-hour period. Now, the Noida administration has said it will be conducting random sampling for COVID at different points on the Delhi-Noida border and also the inter-district borders, apart from railway stations, bus stands and metro stations. So, a surge being seen in the national capital region. Now, according to reports, India has put a temporary hold on all major exports of the AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine, which is made by the Serum Institute of India, to meet demands at home as infections are rising. This all according to sources. The move will also affect the supplies to the Gavi WHO-backed COVAX vaccine sharing facility, through which more than 180 countries are expected to get doses. Remember, India has been sending doses so it can be disseminated across the world. India is, however, not officially banning COVID vaccine exports. Now, the big political story, a controversial bill proposing to give more powers to Delhi's Lieutenant Governor, that means the centre's representative compared to the city's elected government, was passed by the Rajya Sabha yesterday amid a walkout by the Congress. The bill is seen as a huge setback to Arvind Kejriwal's government, which has been sparring with the Lieutenant Governor since it came to power for the first time in the national capital in 2013. The bill was passed after 2 days of chaos in the upper house, where opposition MPs repeatedly said it will destroy democracy. The opposition has been demanding that the bill be sent to a select committee. There was a walkout. The bill was passed. Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal tweeted, the Rajya Sabha passed the GNCTD amendment bill. Sad day for Indian democracy. We will continue our struggle to restore power back to people. Whatever be the obstacles, we will continue doing good work. Work will neither stop nor slow down. Earlier, we spoke to NDTV's Arvind for more details.
The Lok Sabha passed this contentious Government of National Capital Territory Delhi Amendment Bill. Now the Rajya Sabha has also passed this bill. The opposition parties in masse they walked out of this proceeding before the voting took place. When the bill was moved for consideration, the opposition parties wanted a division of votes, and when they saw that the ruling party has numbers, then the opposition parties in masse they walked out. In fact, during the debate, also during the discussion on the bill, also opposition parties wanted this particular bill to be sent to select committee. They questioned the urgency. They questioned the urgency of the government. In fact, they said that many of the MPs have gone for the election campaigning across all these 5 states, and why can't the bill be postponed so that once all the MPs come, the bill can be deliberated, can be discussed, and then it can be taken into consideration. But the ruling party they pushed forward the bill today, and then with the numbers, the bill has been passed. Not just the Aam Aadmi Party, which is the ruling party in Delhi, across all the regional parties, including the national parties like Left and also Congress Party and also SP, also came together. They questioned the ruling government, saying that this is like giving a power to one individual, that is the LG, who is not an elected person. This is like defining the government in Delhi as LG. So all the opposition parties came together. They opposed parties like YSR Congress and also BJD, who usually go along with the ruling party BJP. They also took a stand against the ruling party on this particular bill. Though they didn't vote against the bill, they walked out. But they made it clear that they are not happy with the bill. But with the numbers, the Rajya Sabha has also passed the bill. Next, the bill will be taken to the president. Once the president signs the bill, then the lieutenant governor will be the government in Delhi. What we are also hearing from our sources that the Aam Aadmi Party will be moving the Supreme Court against this particular bill.
Now the developments in Maharashtra, where the BJP is keeping up the attack on the Maharashtra Vikas Aghadi government, with Devendra Fadnavis leading a BJP delegation to the Raj Bhavan yesterday to meet the Governor Bhagat Singh Koshari, demanding that he ask the government for a report.
ये बॉम्ब लेकर घूम रहे लेटर बॉम्ब, अरे वो छोटा फटाका भी नहीं।
ये जो रिपोर्ट केंद्रीय गृह सचिव जी को दी गई है, ये छोटा फटाका है या बड़ा बम है, ये तो जल्दी ही सामने आएगा।
Devendra Fadnavis leading a BJP delegation to the Raj Bhavan.
सारी घटनाएं दुखदाई है। इतनी सारी घटनाएं होने के बावजूद महाराष्ट्र के मुख्यमंत्री जी ने उसके ऊपर एक बयान भी नहीं दिया। पवार साहब ने 2 प्रेस ली, किंतु जो मंत्री है उनको केवल बचाने का प्रयास पवार साहब ने किया। महावसूली सरकार में कांग्रेस पार्टी का क्या अस्तित्व है हमको तो समझ में नहीं आता।
Fadnavis, while questioning the Chief Minister's silence on the issue, said the governor can ask for a report and get the details of what has happened. The NCP's Nawab Malik hit back.
तो सरकार को बदनाम करने का खेल भारतीय जनता पार्टी द्वारा शुरू है। रश्मि शुक्ला की रिपोर्ट पे कहा जा रहा है कि ट्रांसफर में पैसे लिए गए। रश्मि शुक्ला की रिपोर्ट तथ्यहीन है। जो रिपोर्ट में नामों का उल्लेख है भी ट्रांसफर 80% गलत है।
In Delhi, a setback for the replaced Mumbai Police Commissioner Parambir Singh in the Supreme Court over his petition against his transfer and the allegations against the Home Minister of Maharashtra. The Supreme Court asked Parambir Singh to approach the Bombay High Court with his plea and questioned why the Home Minister hadn't been made a party to case if Singh's complaint of corruption was against him. While the court observed the matter was serious, it also held that a lot of the material that has come in the public domain is the consequence of the two people falling out. Sachin Vaze, the police inspector whose arrest sparked off this entire controversy, leading to Parambir Singh's removal for unforgivable lapses according to the Home Minister, was booked under the stringent anti-terror law, the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. The Home Minister met the Chief Minister twice in the day and even attended a cabinet meeting held in the afternoon.
जिस लोगों के फोन नंबर के टैपिंग की परमिशन मांग की थी, उनके तो फोन नंबर टैप ही नहीं हुए, टैप हुए कहीं अलग नंबर ही। और क्या मालूम कि ऐसे करते करते पूरे मंत्रिमंडल का ही फोन टैप करने का काम रश्मि जी ने किया होगा।
Soon after the cabinet meeting ended, senior ministers discussed the fallout of the phone tapping issue. The person behind the phone tapping, the then intelligence chief of the state Rashmi Shukla, it is believed had sought permission for some phones but tapped other phones. And when this was revealed, she had sought the leniency of the government, which the government had agreed to because she was a senior officer. Now, of course, the cabinet has discussed what kind of action they can take against Rashmi Shukla for illegal phone tapping. In Mumbai, with camera person Rajendra Dhalkar and Arvind Gunasekhar in New Delhi, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
Now, Maharashtra Home Minister Anil Deshmukh late night on Wednesday informed that he's written a letter to the Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray to investigate the corrupt malpractices allegations that have been levelled against him by the former Mumbai Police Chief Parambir Singh. Taking to his Twitter handle, Mr. Deshmukh shared the letter he's written to Thackeray. He's tweeted, "I have asked the Chief Minister to inquire into allegations made against me by former Police Commissioner Parambir Singh to bring out the truth. If the Chief Minister inquires the matter, I would welcome it." And he signs off Satyamev Jayate. For that, time for us to slip into a short break. Coming up on the other side, the latest developments on WhatsApp. We'll get you the details. Welcome back. The Fair Trade Regulator, Competition Commission of India, has launched an investigation into WhatsApp's new privacy policy, which was already under judicial scrutiny. The antitrust body has taken a prima facie view that Facebook-owned WhatsApp's new policy is in contravention of India's Competition Act through its exploitative and exclusionary conduct in the garb of policy update. The probe into the instant messaging platform's policies follows not only the increasing scrutiny of the messaging platform's updated terms, but also a series of regulatory measures by Indian authorities against big tech companies. Now, in a statement, WhatsApp has said, "We look forward to engaging with the CCI. WhatsApp remains committed to protecting people's personal communications with end-to-end encryption and providing transparency about how these new optional business features work." That time for us to slip into a short break. More news updates on the other side. Stay with us. Now, battleground West Bengal, and in Bengal, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and OBCs have taken centre stage this election. The state has 84 reserved SC/ST seats in all, and in the first phase, almost all 30 seats are going to the polls, all on Saturday in Jungle Mahal. In 2019, BJP had made inroads in this area to win 18 Lok Sabha seats. Has the BJP been able to hang on to that advantage, or has the Trinamool Congress made a ghar vapsi? Monideepa Banerjee reports.
The superstar of Santhali cinema is now fighting a real-life battle for her community, the Adivasis of Bengal's Jungle Mahal. Daughter of Adivasi leaders of Jharkhand Naren Party, Bir Baha Hasda is TMC candidate from Jhargram. She wants Adivasis to stand up and fight the BJP, which she sees as a threat.
कहीं ना कहीं लगता है कि संथाल या ST/SC के लिए बीजेपी सेफ नहीं है। बीजेपी हम लोगों को बेदखल करेगा क्योंकि सबके पास जमीन का कागज नहीं है, सबके पास हाँ खतरे में है। बीजेपी आएगा तो आदिवासी धर्म को खतरे में होगा, ये तो सबको पता है क्योंकि वो लोग हिंदू के सिवा कुछ नहीं सोचता है।
It is a charge her BJP opponent at Jhargram, Sukhmoy Satpathy, denies. It was Atal Bihari Vajpayee who gave Adivasis a state of their own, Jharkhand, he says, and accuses TMC of dividing people to rule over Bengal.
का काम ही यही है, लोगों में भाग बंटवारा करना। ट्राइबल लोगों के लिए, आदिवासी के लिए तो वाजपेयी जी का जिस टाइम में सरकार था, झारखंड डिमांड था, झारखंड राज्य दे दिया। तो ट्राइबल लोग, आदिवासी लोग सब जानते हैं कौन कैसा है।
Both adversaries are playing the SC/ST card. Bengal's SC/ST population is 30%, bigger than its 27% minority population. The BJP had wooed SC/ST votes in 2019 to win 18 seats in Lok Sabha. Of the 30 assembly seats polling Saturday, TMC had won 26 in 2016, but in 2019, BJP led in 20. Villagers are divided. Some say it was a mistake to vote for BJP in 2019. Others say never TMC.
যে ভুলটা করেছি বিধানসভায় পুনরায় সেই ভুল আর হবে না। উনি সে ভুল বলতে বিজেপি 15 লক্ষ টাকা দেবে বলে সবাইকে লোভ দেখিয়েছিল আর ওইটার জন্য সবাই ভোট দিয়েছিল।
প্রায় 5 লক্ষ টাকা মতো পুরো গ্রামের মানুষ পাবে না।
কে দেয়নি? কোন পঞ্চায়েত?
তখন ওই টিএমসির পঞ্চায়েত ছিল, তোমাদের টাকা এখনো পর্যন্ত আসেনি। আজ 4-5 বছর হয়ে গেল কিন্তু এখনো পর্যন্ত কোনো আর গুলার হদিস না। পঞ্চায়েত পাল্টে গেছে আর ওরা কোনো গুরুত্বই দিল না।
In recent days, both Mamata Banerjee and top BJP leaders like Mr. JP Nadda have been promising to enlist several communities as OBCs or SCs or STs or whatever they want. Every vote will count, and how they cast it in the first phase of polls for 30 seats will be crucial. Every vote will count, and how they are cast in the first phase of polling for the first 30 seats will be crucial. With Judy Shankar, Monadeepa Banerjee, NDTV.
Now, before the COVID pandemic lockdown, the country saw massive anti-CA protests across the country. The protests had first started in December 2019 in Assam, and the first massive violence during the anti-CA protests in the country took place in Chabua in the Dibrugarh district, very close to Assam Chief Minister Sarbanand Sonowal's native village. Cut to 2021, NDTV visited Chabua, that also goes to polls in the crucial first phase of Assam polls, to find out if CAA is still an issue for the people or not.
Election fever at its peak in Chabua, a key constituency in Upper Assam's Dibrugarh district, among the 47 seats going to polls in the first phase on 27th March. But the pictures weren't the same a year ago. This is the same Chabua, singed in violence a year ago against the controversial Citizenship Amendment Act brought in by the central government.
This is perhaps the only remnant of the violent anti-CA protest that Chabua saw in 2019. The angry protesters had put this post office behind me on fire. And not only this post office, several government offices were ransacked, and even the protesters at that point of time had set the residence of the local MLA on fire.
Sitting MLA Binod Hazarika, a BJP old-timer, has changed his political address. He's contesting this time from a new constituency, the neighbouring Lahowal seat. Chabua has been given away to ally Assam Gan Parishad. Congress has a new candidate here. These political maneuvers, Hazarika claims that lost ground has been regained.
उस टाइम में ऐसा हालत हो गया कि हर मेरा कार्यकर्ता को रिजाइन कर दिया गया। मेरा पूरा ये घर अभी तो घर बन गया है, उस टाइम में कुछ नहीं था, पूरा ये जल गया था। जैसे स्वयं जैसा स्कीम दे दिया, उसका बाद हम लोग का जो गांव-गांव में गरीब लोगों का जो स्कीम था सब हम लोग लेके गया।
The anti-CAA protests were halted by the lockdown last year. Now only the All Assam Students Union is protesting.
उनका मन में जो कहा को जो ख्वाब है वो जो दौर है सिटीजनशिप अमेंडमेंट एक्ट का जो सिटीजन असम में आएगा या जोर जुलूम करके जो अमेंडमेंट एक्ट डाल रहा है असम पर, ये जरूर प्रभाव पड़ेगा।
This graffiti on the rail station wall is a reminder of last year's protests. On the streets though, the discourse very different.
पूरी असमीज कम्युनिटी ज़्यादातर लोग इसके खिलाफ है, सीए के खिलाफ, लेकिन वो लोग वोट एंटी सीए के नाम पे करेंगे ऐसा कहना मुश्किल है।
बेरोजगारी इशू है, किसी के पास नौकरी नहीं है, उसका इशू है, उसी को लेके हम लोग वोट देना। मतलब देखिए वो तो बहुत साल भर होने वाला है, अभी का कोई इशू नहीं है।
The Congress has promised a new legislation to nullify CAA in Assam. Two regional parties born out of anti-CAA protests, the Assam Jatiya Parishad and Raijor Dal, contesting the polls on the planks of CAA opposition. But the BJP is hopeful that a renewed NRC and the lost traction on CAA may help it sail through, provided the undercurrent doesn't gather momentum. With camera person Sanjay Chakrabarti and Ratnadeep Chaudhary in Chabua, Osama Shah for NDTV.
Now, two nuns and their two under-training colleagues were heckled and forced to get off a train in UP's Jhansi by members of the Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad, the student wing of the RSS, the ideological mentor of the BJP. They accused the nuns of trying to convert the other two women, the accused based on a mere suspicion. A suspicion that turned out to be a nightmare for the four women, forced them to prove their innocence and even deboard the train at night. The impact felt in Kerala, where the Chief Minister and opposition leader wrote letters of protest to the Prime Minister and Home Minister Amit Shah, who's in Kerala to campaign, where he promised strict action.
आपको भिजवा दिया जाएगा, ऐसी बात नहीं है, आप चिंता मत करिए। हाँ, अगर आप सही हैं तो आपको भिजवा दिया जाएगा। अरे बाहर चलो। यहाँ नेतागिरी कर रहे हैं। अरे नेतागिरी करते तो अभी तक कब कैसे चलता? हो गया, चलो। जल्दी आ रहा है? मैडम, जल्दी आओ। ये गाड़ी छूट जाएगी। बारो, जल्दी बारो। फोटो के अंदर है। अरे फोटो। वीडियो बना रहे हैं।
Outrage after two nuns from the Kerala-based Serum Church and their two trainees who are from Orissa were heckled, harassed and forced to get off a train last Friday in Uttar Pradesh's Jhansi by these goons who the railway police say are from the ABVP, the student wing of the RSS. Though the police had intervened on the complaint of the attackers, none of them have been arrested till this evening after their complaint was found to be false.
अखिल भारतीय विद्यार्थी परिषद के लोगों ने ये कहा कि इनको उतारकर पूरी जांच की जाए और कि दो युवतियां ये संबंधित दो युवतियों का धन परिवर्तन करा रही हैं, इसकी पूरी जांच की जाए। उनकी जांच की गई, उनके सर्टिफिकेट की जांच की गई, तो दोनों लड़कियों के पास से बैप्टिज्म सर्टिफिकेट मिला जो 2003 का था।
Amid anger over the incident, with both the ruling and main opposition party in Kerala protesting in the middle of their election campaign, Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan wrote to Home Minister Amit Shah, saying such incidents tarnish the image of the nation and its ancient tradition of religious tolerance. Such incidents require utmost condemnation by the union government. Mr. Shah, who was in Kerala campaigning, promised action by the BJP government in UP.
जो भी आरोपी है, जिन्होंने भी ये किया है, उनको कानून के हवाले जल्द से जल्द करने का काम भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार करेगी।
उत्तर प्रदेश is wearing a dress which is a religious dress, and he can move. He can travel across the India with full freedom. Then all the other religious people who wear their religious dress should have the same freedom to travel.
But no answers so far about how the attackers could get away for so many days after taking the law in their hands. With Vinod Gautam in Jhansi and Sneha Mary Koshi in Thiruvananthapuram, this is Alok Pandey, NDTV.
Welcome back. Now, an exclusive interview with Kamal Hassan, the actor turned politician who's fighting his first election, on being asked if he will stop making films if he becomes an MLA. He said MGR was an MLA and he did more than 10-20 films.
Now, when you talked about your ambition of winning the state, your critics say first you still have to win your own seat. And is that a worry for you? Because there is this view here that you're an outsider. You live in Chennai. And we were actually out speaking to people, and some of them spoke in your favor, but some of them did say that. They said he's not from here.
They say that, but Gandhiji is an outsider. Tamil Nadu. For Tamil Nadu, he's a Gujarati. But that's not how people of Tamil Nadu saw them. And people of Tamil Nadu have encouraged a man like MGR, who was a Malayali by birth. So that this outsider trick won't work. People love you, they love you. And I think if anyone has to remind me that MGR is a Malayali, for us he is a Tamil.
Right.
Like most Malayalis think that I'm part Malayali.
So will you, if you win, move here, or?
Yes, we have already set up offices here.
Right.
And I'm a guy who has houses in many places.
Okay.
So
you're happy to kind of shuttle if it comes to that.
Yes, yes. I can see my kind of work is not, I'll have to work from a head office. I'm a filmmaker.
Right.
Even if I'm an MLA, I'll sit here and make my films.
You will continue to make your films, even if you get elected.
Yes,
you're not going to stop.
For me, politics is not a profession. My livelihood is not politics. My livelihood is cinema. Like if I were a doctor, I would say the same thing. My clinic will run.
Do you think that might lead to some skepticism and criticism about how sincere you are, saying that you're not going to be full-time, you're still making movies?
MGR was an MLA, and after becoming an MLA, he did more than 10, 20 films.
Right.
We have a history. And Mr. N.T. Ramarao, after becoming a Chief Minister, did a film.
Right.
So anybody talks about those things, that can be refuted. It's a question of how I deliver as an MLA. And I am very sure that I'll do much better than any of my predecessors.
So even about your own seat, about winning your own seat, you're confident?
Absolutely.
Now, Maharashtra on Wednesday reported the highest number of daily COVID cases in any state since the beginning of the pandemic, recording close to 32,000 cases. Maharashtra reported 31,855 cases and 95 deaths on Wednesday, while 15,000 patients were discharged. Huge spike in COVID cases was also seen in Mumbai as the city reported a record 5,185 cases. Dharavi, which is one of the largest slums in Asia, reported 62 COVID positive cases. And in the national capital, also a worry as COVID cases are surging. Delhi reported 1,254 cases in the last 24 hours on Wednesday. That's the highest in 3 months. 6 deaths were also reported in the same period. Now, the Noida administration, which is Noida district outside of Delhi, will now be conducting random sampling for COVID at different points on the Delhi-Noida and also inter-district borders, apart from railway stations, bus stands and metro stations. So really ramping up the COVID protocols and checking of people. Now, in vaccine news, according to reports, India has put a temporary hold on all major exports of the AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine made by the Serum Institute of India to meet demands at home as infections are rising. And this is according to sources that have been cited. The move will also affect supplies to the Gavi WHO-backed COVAX vaccine sharing facility, through which more than 180 countries are expected to get doses. India is, however, not officially banning COVID vaccine exports. So even as the numbers are going up and variants have been discovered and the authorities asking people to follow COVID protocols in Uttar Pradesh, take a look at what's happening on the ground amid chants of Har Har Mahadev. Hundreds of devotees hurl gulal in the air on the occasion of Rang Bhari Ekdashi in Varanasi to mark the beginning of holy celebrations in the city. So on the ground, something very different taking place in Vrindavan as well. Holy celebrations are taking place, and this even as authorities have announced fresh regulations and asked people to follow COVID protocols. On the ground, the situation is very, very different, and celebrations are taking place. There you can see in Varanasi and in Vrindavan, massive crowds are gathering, and this, of course, leading to a risk of a spike in COVID cases there. Well, to talk more about the situation in the country and the discovery of this new variant, we're joined by Dr. Rajesh Parekh, Director of Medical Research at Jaslok Hospital, Mumbai, and Dr. Anup Kumar, Professor and HOD, Safdarjung Hospital. Thank you both, doctors, for joining us this morning. Dr. Parekh, first to you. On one hand, the government finally yesterday, after weeks of speculation, saying yes, there is a variant that has been found here in India, a double mutant. However, they've also said this variant is not behind the surge in cases that we're seeing.
Good morning, Gargi. Always a pleasure to be with you. There seems to have been a lag between accepting reality. That's the best one might say. I have been talking about the second wave for well over a year now, initially speculative. Mid-December, I wrote up a policy paper being a little more certain of a second wave that was coming in, just based on what's happened in the past and what's been happening all over the world in the current pandemic, and suggested measures that is now confined to academics. But for quite some time now, Gargi, I have been discussing with you too about a second wave which has been in the country. If you have half a minute, I have a feeling I may have shown this to you before, but if you'll bear with me, I think it's worth looking at again. And here is, if it can be seen clearly, the 3 waves of the pandemic which occurred 100 years ago. Here they are. And as we can see, the second wave was far more devastating than the first 100 years ago. And the third, though not as bad as the second, was still worse than the first. Now, this has been the pattern. It's an intrinsic feature of pandemics. And we should have been expecting this. We should not be surprised. It was very clear a few weeks ago, not with genomic analysis, mind you, because that hadn't been done yet. But if you looked at the clusters in which the infections were spreading, it did seem like there was a mutant strain. Now it turns out there's more than one. There's a twin mutant in India, and the South African and the UK variants are also spreading through the country. So I think in a way, I'm saddened that we waited this long, but of course relieved because we're finally acknowledging reality. Now comes the second question that you brought up, Gargi, and whether there is a connection between the infectivity and the mutant strains. Only genomic analysis would reveal that, but mind you, this has to be done on a large scale. It has to be done on thousands of people to establish a correlation. I suspect there is a correlation because the way the infectivity is going up. Right. But then again, the last word will be only with genomic analysis. I think what we ought to do is be open to possibilities rather than be in denial.
Right, absolutely. And that graph you showed was frightening. The second wave, those many years ago was really quite much, it was much higher than the first wave. Dr. Anup Kumar, on one hand, the authorities saying that yes, finally admitting, and this is something a lot of experts, as I said earlier, were suspecting for a while, that there was a more prevalence of variants. We've also found a variant which is unique to India with this double mutation, etc. But on one hand, authorities keep saying now, the only way to fight this, we were speaking earlier if we carried that interview earlier by Dr. V.K. Paul, who said that the only way to fight this is to, continue practicing COVID protocols, etc., etc. But on the ground, the situation is completely different. Here on NDTV, we keep talking about it, keep warning people. But on the ground, you have elections, you have massive rallies, you have, celebrations for upcoming Holi taking place. And, one can just imagine what's going to happen, especially if this variant is found to be more infectious.
Yeah, good morning, Gagi. I think you are absolutely right. See, having mutations of the virus is a normal phenomenon, as we have seen even for common flu, it happens every year. So having the mutations is not the only cause which can explain the rise in the number of cases for last few months. And you can see there, it's a COVID appropriate behavior not being followed anywhere in all those states. And this is very, very apparent. And wherever it has happened, whether it's UK or any other European countries, the second wave has come back. So the second wave is not only because of the mutants, but all because of our we are not following this COVID appropriate behavior. And I think Dr. Paul, whatever he has emphasized, this is absolutely correct. See, the only way to contain is we have to continue what we were doing earlier. We cannot have some new weapon in our armamentarium. We have to test, track, treat. We have to follow the COVID appropriate behavior. And yes, these mutations, Dr. Parikh is right. We have to carry on these tests on a larger number of scales. Only then we can analyze whether it is a cause of this increased surge or not. But I think it will take a long time. Till that time, we have to follow the appropriate behavior. We have to ban all these gatherings. The administration has to be very, very strict, implement strict fines, and then only the people will be scared of carrying out these kind of proceedings.
Right. I'm sorry, but I just don't see that happening. Again, I emphasize that something else is said in the press conferences by authorities, by all you doctors, but on the ground, it's just completely different. The massive election rally is also taking place. Dr. Parikh, the only way to get ahead of this is to, rapidly increase the pace of our vaccination program. And unfortunately, when we started the vaccine drive, at that time, the numbers were so low. A lot of people said, what's the point? We don't even need the vaccines. The numbers have come down. But now we need to, that's the only way to counter it, aggressively vaccinate as many people in as short a time.
Absolutely, Gargi, if I may. Here's another graph which may be of some concern. It's 3 days old. It is showing the vaccination program in various countries. If you look at Great Britain, they have vaccinated nearly 45% of their population. The United States comes a little below. and then you have the European countries. But here, if you look at India, you can see that we've barely vaccinated 3% of our population, while 7% of our vaccines have gone to waste. Because this is another reality we need to deal with. You're absolutely right. We need to escalate the vaccination program dramatically. The government's announcement that from 1st April, people 45 and over will be eligible is appropriate. I think we need to go much further. We need to open it up for everyone. And just one other concern, Gargi, which is not being highlighted, but which I fear will become, another topic of discussion for us in a few days. And that is, in France, the mutant strains are evading the RT-PCR diagnostic test. Now, our strategy everywhere was always to first test, then to isolate. And but if the mutant strains turn out to evade the RT-PCR test in our country, as has happened elsewhere in the world, then we have another problem, and we are left only to one method, and that is COVID-appropriate behavior. The French have a saying, plus ça change. The more the change, the more the same thing. After 100 years, we may still come back to the basics, hygiene, and all the things that go along with COVID-appropriate behavior. We have to be on our guard. We have to accelerate the vaccination program.
Right, and it's been a year of the lockdown, COVID lockdown that we saw, and of course authorities have ruled out any sort of complete lockdown in that sense, but in some areas there have been restrictions. Thank you so much, doctors, for speaking to us, and hopefully more and more people will hear and get that message that they have to continue following all those protocols that have been in place. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Gargi.
With that, time for us to slip into a short break. More news updates on the other side. Stay with us. Welcome back. Maharashtra Home Minister Anil Deshmukh has informed that he has written a letter to Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray to investigate the corrupt malpractices allegations that have been levelled against him by former Mumbai Police Chief Parambir Singh. Taking to his Twitter handle late last night, Mr. Deshmukh shared the letter that he's written to Mr. Thackeray, saying, "I have asked the Chief Minister to inquire into the allegations made against me by Parambir Singh to bring out the truth. If the Chief Minister inquires the matter, I would welcome it," is what he has said in his tweet and in that letter. Well, let's go across to NDTV Saurabh for more on this story. And Saurabh, so after all the allegations yesterday, you had a delegation of the BJP even meeting with the governor. Now you have the Home Minister there writing to the Chief Minister asking him to open up an inquiry.
Absolutely. The government at this point seems pretty determined to take this head on. They believe that, they have enough material or enough strength to sort of take this head on and not cave in to the BJP, and that's something that you will see the government doing. Now, obviously, this is something that has been going on for the last few days, and the BJP has been demanding the minister's removal, resignation, but that is something that perhaps you will not see happening in the near future, given the fact that the government has also decided to dig in its heels. Now, obviously, this is a case where there are complexities involved, and in the sense that this was also discussed at the cabinet meeting yesterday. This whole phone tap issue that sort of was raised by Devendra Fadnavis post the Vazay incident, and in that sense, this is going to be a lingering issue in Maharashtra. The BJP wants to sort of topple the government here. They want to come to power here. The Maharashtra Vikas Aghadi says that that will not happen, and because the BJP has been unsuccessful in breaking its MLAs, they are now resorting to tactics like these to sort of put pressure on the government. But at this point, what you see is a bitter fight between the opposition and the government, with the leader of the opposition, Devendra Fadnavis, going to the Home Secretary in Delhi, going to the governor, and what even Anil Deshmukh is saying, that there should be a probe. As far as the transfers issue is concerned, which is based on a report by the former intelligence chief of the state, which alleged that transfers had been done, postings had been given for bribes in exchange of bribes. The government says that, most of the transfers that were listed in her report, as in the people who were supposed to get postings for bribes, they did not get those postings. So they say the report has a lot of false statements and is based on illegal phone tapping, and they're considering action on that ground as well.
All right, Saurabh, thanks so much for joining us there with the latest. So the Home Minister in Maharashtra, they're welcoming a probe into all charges against him. With that, time for us to slip into a short break. On the other side, we'll take a look at the stock market opening. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, let's now take a look at how the markets have opened this morning, and let's just bring up the Sensex numbers there, and Sensex in the red as it's been all this week. Remember, there's a cautious approach in the stock market as all eyes are on the spike in COVID cases with a surge in many countries. So it's gone below that 49,000 mark, down 326 points. You can see how the market has gone down since yesterday, and the market currently trading at 48,853. So worrying trend there with the markets going down, but this is world over with this cautious approach given the rise in COVID cases. Let's take a look at the top losers, and BPCL trading at 421, down nearly 2%. Tata Motors down 1.88%, trading at 288.90. The Entertainment down as well. And let's bring up the other top losers this morning. Yes Bank is down 1.71%, trading at 14.40. Adani Ports and SEZ trading at 696, that's down 1.6%. And India Bulls Housing is trading at 200, down 1.4%. Well, let's take a look at the auto top losers, and Tata Motors is down over 2%, trading at 288. TVS Motor down as well at 1.77%, trading at 556. Motherson Sumi down, trading at 198.35. And the other auto stocks that are in the red, Ashok Leyland trading at 110, down minus 1.43%. Eicher Motors as well, and Maruti Suzuki down 1.28%. Let's bring up the banking stocks now, and IDBI Bank is down nearly 3.5% there, trading at 36.75. Federal Bank in the red as well, and Yes Bank trading at 14.35, that's down 2.05%. Axis Bank in the red as well, trading at 695, that's down by 1.59%. Kotak Mahindra Bank in the red as well, and IndusInd Bank trading at 946.50, that's down 1.37%. So there you can see the Sensex opening in the red, down 300 points on opening. It's trading below the 49,000 mark, trading at 48,861, down 318 points. That's 0.65% down. So the market's opening there in the red, and this is based on the rise in COVID cases. Again, India also facing a second surge of COVID cases. Well, let's get to the latest election news, and a battery of BJP leaders are in Bengal today. Today is the last day of campaigning ahead of the first phase of elections. Amit Shah will hold 5 meetings. Yogi Adityanath, the UP Chief Minister, and Rajnath Singh will hold 3 each, as well as cricketer turned BJP leader Gautam Gambhir. Mamta Banerjee has also upped her daily quota of rallies. Well, let's go across to NDTV's Monideepa for more. And Moni, the show stealer, however, is going to be Mithun Chakrabarti, the Dada of Bengali cinema, the disco dancer of Bollywood.
Well, I don't know if you can hear me, but here is the excitement building up for Mithun Chakrabarti, the superstar of Bengali cinema, the Dada, who is beginning his campaign for BJP today. If you recall, on the 7th of March, he had shared the dais with the Prime Minister and said, he was going to be part of the BJP. He is not contesting, but he is beginning campaigning today for the BJP from Shalthoda in Bankura district. 3 road shows are expected. Excitement building up for it, as you can see, and crowds are expected, large crowds, to see him campaign for the BJP candidate, which is a young lady called Chandana Baru. I really don't know if you can hear me anymore, but you know, the BJP would have liked Mutant to campaign and contest on a BJP ticket, but he has so far resisted joining the party as a candidate. He was supposed to, there was a lot of talk about him joining and contesting from the Raj Bihari seat in Kolkata, but that has not happened. 3 road shows today, and again day after. So Mithun Chakravarti definitely emerging as the star campaigner for the BJP in Bengal. The heat is on. Mamata Banerjee has also stepped up the number of rallies that she's doing in a day from 3 a day to 4 today. So yes, Bengal, all excited. Mithun Chakravarti on the road.
All right, Monideepa there reporting from Bankura, the first stop for superstar Mithun Chakrabarti, as he's a star campaigner for the BJP. He'll make his first appearance today with this rally in Saltora in the Bankura district. Well, news now from Assam, and before the COVID pandemic lockdown, the country had seen massive anti-CA protests across the country. Now, the protests had first started in December 2019 in Assam, and the first massive violence that took place during the anti-CA protest was in Chabua there in the Dibrugarh district, very close to Assam Chief Minister Sarbanand Sonowal's native village. Now, cut to 2021, NDTV visited Chabua. That also goes to polls in the crucial first phase of the Assam polls to find out if CAA is still an issue for the people or not. Sanjay Chakrabarti and Ratnadeep Chaudhary report.
Election fever at its peak in Chabua, a key constituency in Upper Assam's Dibrugarh district, among the 47 seats going to polls in the first phase on 27th March. But the pictures weren't the same a year ago. This is the same Chabua, singed in violence a year ago against the controversial Citizenship Amendment Act brought in by the central government.
This is perhaps the only remnant of the violent anti-CA protest that Chabua saw in 2019. The angry protesters had put this post office behind me on fire. And not only this post office, several government offices were ransacked, and even the protesters at that point of time had set the residence of the local MLA on fire.
Sitting MLA Binod Hazarika, a BJP old-timer, has changed his political address. He's contesting this time from a new constituency, the neighbouring Lahowal seat. Chabua has been given away to ally Assam Gan Parishad. Congress has a new candidate here. These political maneuvers, Hazarika claims that lost ground has been regained.
उस टाइम में ऐसा हालत हो गया कि हर मेरा कार्यकर्ता को रिजाइन कर दिया गया, मेरा पूरा ये घर अभी तो घर बन गया है, उस टाइम में कुछ नहीं था, पूरा ये जल गया था, जैसे स्वयं जैसा स्कीम दे दिया, उसका बाद हम लोग का जो गांव-गांव में गरीब लोगों का जो स्कीम था सब हम लोग लेके गया.
The anti-CAA protests were halted by the lockdown last year. Now only the All Assam Students Union is protesting.
उनका मन में जो कहा को जो ख्वाब है वो जो दौर है सिटीजनशिप अमेंडमेंट एक्ट का जो सिटीजन असम में आएगा या जोर जुल्म करके जो अमेंडमेंट एक्ट डाल रहा है असम पर, ये जरूर प्रभाव पड़ेगा.
This graffiti on the rail station wall is a reminder of last year's protests. On the streets though, the discourse very different.
पूरी असमीज कम्युनिटी ज़्यादातर लोग इसके खिलाफ है, सीए के खिलाफ, लेकिन वो लोग वोट एंटी सीए के नाम पे करेंगे ऐसा कहना मुश्किल है.
बेरोजगारी इशू है, किसी के पास नौकरी नहीं है, उसका इशू है, उसी को लेके हम लोग वोट देना. मतलब देखिए वो तो बहुत साल भर मुरम्मत होने वाला है, अभी का कोई इशू नहीं है.
The Congress has promised a new legislation to nullify CAA in Assam. Two regional parties born out of anti-CAA protests, the Assam Jatiya Parishad and Raijor Dal, contesting the polls on the planks of CAA opposition. But the BJP is hopeful that a renewed NRC and the lost traction on CAA may help it sail through, provided the undercurrent doesn't gather momentum. With camera person Sanjay Chakrabarti and Ratnadeep Chaudhary in Chabua, Osama Shah for NDTV.
All right, now moving on to tech news and the big development. The Fair Trade Regulator, Competition Commission of India, has launched an investigation into WhatsApp's new privacy policy, which was already under judicial scrutiny. The antitrust body has taken prima facie view that Facebook-owned WhatsApp's new policy is in contravention of India's Competition Act through its exploitative and exclusionary conduct in the garb of policy update. The probe into the instant messaging platform's policies follows not only the increasing scrutiny of the messaging platform's updated terms, but also a series of regulatory measures by the Indian authorities against big tech companies. In a statement, WhatsApp has said, "We look forward to engaging with the CCI. WhatsApp remains committed to protecting people's personal communications with end-to-end encryption and providing transparency about how these new optional business features work." Well, to talk more about this, we're joined by Abhik Datta, co-founder Henson Group India, cybersecurity expert, and Pavan Dugal, a cyber law expert. Abhik, first so now this inquiry has been launched into WhatsApp, this even as the case was, as we said, under judicial scrutiny, and it has been found that it was contravening some of the rules.
Right. I feel that, the government of India and the CC has done the right thing, right? Nobody should have the absolute control over, what they want to present to the users. There should be, some teeth through it. And if at all they come up with an observation that, there is a breach of information, or WhatsApp is, taking your information and sharing it with somebody else, that has to be taken very seriously. Data is money today.
Right, Pavan, your view on this, because, just explain it to us, because even as it's under judicial scrutiny, now it's going to, and this is a time-bound probe. The government, the authorities have asked that, the results or the findings of the probe be completed within 60 days. And WhatsApp, in its statement to us, has said that it's going to, it welcomes it and it's going to cooperate. But tell us more about the reasons for this probe being ordered.
The reason is very simple. The CCI has got the statutory power to order investigation through the Director General of CCI, who's been given various powers for investigation. Now, prima facie, CCI has come to the viewpoint that the amended privacy policy is in gross violation of the existing law and is likely to even contravene the provisions of the Competition Act. Now, clearly, the CCI is a watchdog that's primarily aiming to watch over the legal interests of privacy, of data protection of users, and that the players like WhatsApp do not become dominant players who, under the garb of this dominant monopoly, can go ahead and do any arbitrary action. When you look at, from another perspective, the way how WhatsApp's amended privacy policy has been thrust down the throats of Indians, it's very clear. WhatsApp is telling all users, please cut both your hands, put it on the table, and never cry alone, because you will have no remedy. I, as WhatsApp, will keep on sharing all your transaction information with not just Facebook and Facebook group of companies, but also with all independent third-party service providers and business associates and affiliates of WhatsApp. Now, this action is in complete contravention of both the Information Technology Rules 2011, as it stood then, and with effect from 25th of February 2021, this action is also in violation of the Information Technology Rules 2021. So while the courts are going to be scrutinizing from a legal angle, the CCI will be taking the chance to examine this as to how this entire behavior of WhatsApp is anti-competitive and is against the interests of the users per se. So I believe a very welcome move. It's a strong regulatory message that was gone on to WhatsApp, and not just WhatsApp, all significant social media intermediaries, that if they'll have to comply, if they want the Indian market, they will have to comply with Indian laws come what may.
All right,
whether you're located in India or not, it's of no consequence.
All right, so you're welcoming this move, and Abhik, at the end of this probe, what they've been asked to investigate is the full extent of data sharing that's taking place, and I think this is something consumers want to know. Even though they may agree to some sort of update, they want to know what it means in terms of their information going around, and that is a part of this investigation: impact of data sharing through the involuntary consent of the users. Tell us more about that.
Right, I'll give you a very, very simple example. So in India, political parties are blamed for, giving free liquor to the voters when there are elections, and what they want is, voters to vote for them. Now, what I'm doing in a sense is, taking somebody's addiction to a liquor, for example, and make use of that to vote, have them vote for me. WhatsApp doing exactly the same, right? Now, people are addicted to WhatsApp, the seductive, cool-looking platform, and WhatsApp is saying, oh, all you need to do is, just sign this agreement. And people, out of their ignorance, a majority of people would sign that agreement without even knowing what they're sharing with WhatsApp. And that's money on the table, right? Data is all about money. And that's what WhatsApp is doing. And they have a history of doing that, Facebook in the past has been accused of sharing information. And mind you, we're talking about this happening in India only. This hasn't happened in Europe, right? That's where the GDPR compliance is. So maybe they've taken advantage of the laws that we have in place. And in Europe, they're scared about the GDPR laws, and they maybe fined a huge amount of money. So I really feel, this is a welcome step, and it has to be done. We don't want any sort of monopoly in the country.
Right, and while we talk about authorities' signal to these big tech companies, the reason why this is particularly worrying, Pavan, isn't it because it's it's not just WhatsApp, it's WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, all these are very, very popular in India, and to know just the amount of data being shared across platforms.
Clearly, India is a data nation. We are a data economy, and all companies want to target India primarily not just for the huge market, but with the humongous volumes of data that Indians are generating. Indians are in a great Indian vomiting revolution where they are vomiting all kinds of information. And it's this kind of information that's being sought to be monetized by these service providers. And at a time when India is having a policy vacuum, we don't have a data protection law, we don't have a law on privacy. This is a very fertile ground for all these big service providers to come in and hunt for all this kind of data without any kind of regulatory mechanisms. So in this exercise, the IT rules 2021 are beginning to address the said loopholes, but then that's only a temporary ad interim transient measure. Till such time as the dedicated laws don't come across, these IT rules 2021 hopefully should put more regulatory control and oversight over how these service providers are going to control data and are going to share data. To a large extent, the IT rules 2021 are watering down the rules of the 2021. So it's a soft glove approach again. I think India needs to take its mind very, very clearly. We have to take a strong stand, and we cannot come up with conflicting kind of visions and messaging with different kinds of rules and regulations. So clearly, I think all eyes will be on the government, on the regulator, to how they can actually give a solitary single message. You're welcome in India, but please comply with Indian law. Otherwise, as per the IT rules 2021, tighten your belts, because your top management and your company is going to be liable for criminal prosecution, both under the Indian Penal Code as also under the Information Technology Act 2000.
All right, so consumers also are aware of what's happening and protecting consumer rights. Thank you so much, Abhik Datta and Pavan Dugal, for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Well, time for us to slip into a short break. On the other side, the latest COVID numbers in India reports over 50,000 cases in the last 24 hours. Welcome back. And the latest COVID data has been released, and India has reported over 53,000 cases, 53,476 cases detected in the last 24 hours. This is the highest since the 23rd of October, and deaths in the last 24 hours have been 251. So there's been an increase in the number of deaths as well, and active cases have risen by 26,735. So the total number of COVID deaths so far is 1,60,692. There you can see how the curve is rising continuously, and as many have warned, this is the second wave of COVID in the country. If we talk about the top 5 states, well, Maharashtra last night reported 31,855 cases, which is the highest number it's reported ever since the start of this pandemic. Punjab, Kerala, Karnataka, Chhattisgarh all reporting over 2,000 cases each. Well, with that, time for us to slip into a short break. More news updates on the other side. Stay with us.